Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and in this video we are going to be taking a look at the cheapest GPU you can get from AMD and their new 7000 series of GPUs, and that is the RX 7600. And this is the Asus OC model. It's a pretty simple model. It's got dual fan. It's 9.6 inches long, which is about the same size as a standard ATX motherboard. You have, as you can see on the screen here, we have one HDMI port and three display ports. HDMI is 2.1, display ports are 1.4. So you got lots of connectivity options. The downside to this, and I did another video on it comparing the 3rd gen to 4th gen, is that it only has 8 PCIe lanes versus most other GPUs having 16 lanes. Same with NVIDIA, their 4060 and 4060 Ti, for cost-cutting measures, I'm assuming, they only have 8 PCIe lanes as well. So there could be, based on that test, if you are running hardware that only supports Gen 3, you could see yourself experiencing some performance impact, but not much, not enough that I wouldn't recommend not getting this card, because it was only in some instances. In most games, there were no issues. I'm actually quite impressed by the card and the performance. I'm not impressed by the price, that's for sure. I actually got this on sale for like 320 Canadian. It's going for like 350, 360, 370 Canadian, somewhere in that ballpark. American, I think these are going for about 270. So they're about the same cost, a little bit more than the 6650 XT. They have very similar performance to that card. And to the 4060, this would have roughly the same rasterized performance. However, if you do plan on using ray tracing, this card is horrible at it, and we're going to see it when we get into some of the tests I did with it. Just absolutely horrible at ray tracing. I didn't expect very much anyways. It's one of their cheaper cards, so don't have big hopes for it to begin with. But NVIDIA is definitely known more for having better ray tracing hardware, whereas AMD is always known for having just a little bit better rasterized performance over NVIDIA. It does require an 8-pin PCIe power connector, so it does require a little bit more power. It does, I think it operates at like 175. Where's the watt? It needs a PSU for 550 watts. That's the recommended power supply, but it's not saying what. Yeah, it does not say what the power is. When I was looking at it, it uses like 10 watts less than the 6650 XT. But beyond that, it's like almost identical. It's got the same number of shaders and cores, I believe. So, and roughly the same operating frequency. So it's not much different than the 6650 XT, just based on their RDNA 3 versus RDNA 2. So if you are looking, you'll see more in the benchmarks. 1080p, it is a pretty good card. You're going to get very good performance out of this card. If you can spare a few extra dollars, I think it's less than $100 more to upgrade to 6700 XT. That will be my next video, comparing this to the 6700 XT, but the 6700 XT has more VRAM. This only has 8 gigabytes. 6700 XT has 12. And overall, the 6700 XT just it's starting to show its age at 1440p gaming, but at 1080p gaming, it should be around for a long time to come. Anyway, let's get into the benchmark. So you can see here, I got a mix of games. We got some older games, we got some newer games. And for the most part, you're looking at a minimum average of 60 FPS or higher, no matter what game you're playing, except for Starfield, which still seems to have some performance issues. Regardless of what they say, I still feel that that game is not optimized whatsoever. It's getting substantially lower than Jedi Fallen Order, what came out a little while ago, the Cyberpunk 2077, the 2.0 update. It's much worse than that. Yeah, I can't see that. That's normal. Better optimization, I bet you will see over the next few months. Performance will probably increase. But enough of that rant. Elden Ring only has a max of 60 FPS anyways. I just wanted to show that it's more than capable of reaching the 60 FPS that it has a cap on, and even the 1% lows are hitting 57. So you still get pretty good performance there. Jedi Fallen Order that came out earlier this year, you're looking at an average of 66 with the 1% low of 49. You're getting great performance there. If you look down below, Cyberpunk 2077, you're getting an average of 85. This is after the 2.0 update as well. You're getting an average of 85 and a 1% low of 66. And then for the most part, across the board with everything else, you are getting much higher frame rates. Some of the older games, well, let's go back to a couple of more of the new games. Halo Infinite, 137 FPS, so get pretty high FPS there when you're playing in the arena against other players. Forza Horizon 5, average of 93 with a 1% low of 75. And then some of the older games, well, it's not really that old, but a little bit older. Valhalla, we're getting 103 FPS. Ghost Recon Breakpoint, average of 132 with 1% low of 95. Far Cry 5 and Shadow of Tomb Raider, both a little bit older. We're getting up into the 150 FPS. So, like I say, newer titles, you're able to play max settings and get really good frame rates of an average of 60 plus, except for Starfield. And then when you go to some of the older titles, you're getting extremely high frame rates. And you'll see when we move over to 1440p that for the older titles, it does translate over to still having higher FPS. Now, if you turn FSR on, the games that I did testing on that have FSR with them, you're seeing Jedi Fallen Order going up to an average of 98 with 1% low of 56. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, we're going up to 138 with a 1% low of 89. Cyberpunk 2077, still getting pretty high, is 102 FPS with 1% low of 77. And Starfield, we're practically seeing no change. What was it? We went from 49 up to 53. And the 1% low went from 39 up to 42. So not much change there by turning that on. And moving on to ray tracing, this is where things start to, hurt a little bit. So Jedi Fallen Order, we did drop down quite a bit. So we're at 46 at the average with 34 and the 1% low. Elden Ring, still pretty playable. We're at 56 for the average and 37 for 1% low. And Cyberpunk 2077 just goes to garbage with an average of 23 and a 1% low of 17. So again, like I was saying, if your ray tracing is what you want, go with NVIDIA. They have much better ray tracing support versus AMD. Any comparable AMD to a video card, usually AMD is going to have better rasterized performance. But once you get into ray tracing with upscaling technology, so like DLS 3.5, you're going to get much better performance out of NVIDIA. And just to behold, like even with Jedi Fallen Order, and you probably notice the game list keeps getting lower and lower, is that the games I tested with, only a few of them have ray tracing, and some of them have ray tracing with FSR versus just FSR standalone. So the list is kind of small. Jedi Fallen Order, we have a little bit of a boost. If you turn FSR on, you're going to get to 63 on average with 1% low of 44, and Cyberpunk 2077 is still garbage. And moving on to 1440p, here's where was pretty good about the card, is that it still performs fairly well with older titles at 1440p. So Jedi Fallen Order, Starfield, you're getting, it's not the best performance, but you could still manage to play with an average of 37 and the lows of 30. So you can still manage to play there. Elden Ring, you're still at the same performance as it was 1080p, so 60 average, 57 for the 1% low. Cyberpunk 27, 54 average with 46, 1% low. That's still playable. And then all the rest, some of them are a little bit older, are not as demanding. Like Halo Infinite is newer and Horizon 5 is newer as well, but it's not as demanding. And then when you get into some of the older games like Assassin's Creed, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Far Cry 5, Shadow of Tomb Raider, you still have great performance. You'll be able to play 1440 problem. And if you turn on FSR, Jedi Fallen Order does get a bump up to an average of 62 with 1% low of 47. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, It does boost the FPS, but you were already at a high FPS at native 1440p. Cyberpunk 2077, it does get a boost, so we're at 67 average with a low of 1% low of 44. And Starfield, well, not much of a change there. So we have an average of 43 with 1% low of 35. Ray tracing, yeah, 1440p, you're not going to use ray tracing. Everything is at 30 or lower. It's those 1% lows that I'm concerned of, because it's 19 and 23, but Cyberpunk, that's just not even close. And then those 0.1% lows are going to be much lower than this, so it's going to be pretty jittery. You're not going to want to play you're not going to want to turn on ray tracing at 1440p, and even with FSR turned on, ray tracing is still kind of hurt. Jedi Fallen Order only has an average of 45 with 1% low of 34. You can get by on that, but it's still going to be pretty jittery. And Cyberpunk 2077, we're at an average of 27 versus a 1% low of 22. So not the best. Like I was saying, rasterized performance, it's fantastic. It's going to beat the 4060 in most games. There are some games that are better optimized for NVIDIA versus AMD, but for the most part, you're going to see better performance out of the AMD card. However, if you want to use ray tracing, go with NVIDIA. AMD needs to up their game in that department. And I think no matter what the manufacturer it is, the prices have to come down, because $300 is just crazy for their entry-level cards. Anyway, if you have any questions, comments, please leave them down below. Like the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.